Welcome back to TV viewers. Chris Niccolls here from the camera store, and today we've got the brand new Panasonic FZ2500. Now, if you recall, when we did our G85 video in Photokina, Jordan shot all the video samples for that on the FZ2500. It was a pre-production copy, but we were able to get some really nice samples off of that. Now, today we're going to play with a full production copy, and you know, I'm mostly going to focus on stills today. I'm excited to play with that new big zoom, but for you video shooters out there, we now have the Vlog upgrade on this camera, so we're also going to give you some samples in Vlog, so you guys can take a look at those. But because we only have the one camera, Jordan's gonna be shooting on his trusty FS5 this time. Now we're back out here at the Inglewood Bird Sanctuary here in Calgary because we shot the Sony RX10 III video out here, and we figured this is a good comparison because really it looks like the FZ2500 is in a lot of ways trying to take over the market that the RX10 III owns right now. It's gonna do great stills and great video. I'm excited to see though, can it beat out that Sony? It is a big task. I'm gonna play with it and see if we can do it today. Now I did bring a Sony RX10 III with me as well to compare these two cameras today, and you know, the first thing I'll say, when I played with the RX10 I noticed it's very, very heavy. It's a big chunky camera. Panasonic is definitely lighter and smaller in the hand, a little bit easier to maneuver and carry around. Both have great grips. However, part of that might be the fact that the Sony has a longer lens range here. We're roughly getting a 25 to 600 millimeter range, and it's 2.4 to 4. It's nice and bright. Panasonic's going about 24 to 480, and it's 2.8 to 4.5. So we do have a distinct advantage, not just in speed, but also in range. And that's very important out here at the Bird Sanctuary because you got to stay on the trails. There's no off-roading here. There's no walking off into the woods, so I'm gonna have to get everything with the zoom range that I'm given. Now from a handling standpoint, there are some things that I really like about the FZ2500, and especially when you compare it to the RX10 III. First off, the dials. I mean, the back dial is nice and big, easy to turn. You've got a secondary front dial right here, and of course, very customizable in the Panasonic. Plus a plethora of custom buttons that you can set up, and touchscreen as well. These are all big advantages over the RX10 III, where the back dial on that was so small, I always had such a hard time turning. It never felt very positive. That being said, we don't have the aperture ring that's really nice on the Sony, okay? You do have two rings here, and they are very easy to distinguish. I like that, but you don't have an aperture ring there. But again, you got that secondary dial right up there, and it works well. Now, the touchscreen interface, I do love. I mean, Panasonic have been doing it forever. It works great. You've even got custom buttons through the touchscreen. And look at this screen. Full flip. Jordan and I always love this. I don't know why they don't do this more often. This is by far the best way to implement a touchscreen and a flip screen on a camera. Overall, this camera handles beautifully. Just a neat little thing, and I'm sure other Panasonics have had this as well, but if I hold down a custom button and just hold it down for a little while, it actually then lets me customize it right there live. I like that. I don't even have to go into a menu and find it. I can just say, hey, I want to change this to something else, hold it down for a few seconds, and there we go. Now I've set up the 2500 here for back button focusing, and yeah, you know, the lens range is excellent. We can still get some great detail of the ice and stuff here. Now, what I really like, of course, with Panasonic, the DFD autofocusing, I know I keep saying it, but it's probably the best autofocusing point-to-point that I've ever used. It's just so quick. But another nice feature that I like on the FZ2500 and a lot of other Panasonic cameras is you can set the shutter to fire with a half press of the button as opposed to committing all the way to the full press. Now, I mean, until you get used to it, it means you're gonna have a lot of extra frames you don't want. But when you're trying to be nice and stable, like I'm trying right here to get a shot without any sort of movement, I can focus, take my time, push the shutter, and just the feather lightest touch triggers the shot. It really helps avoid a lot of camera shake. So yeah, we're not seeing a lot of birds out here so far. Not live ones anyways, lots of metal birds, so we're taking pictures of those. I hear one right now. Now, another thing I really like is that when I go to my dedicated movie mode and I set things up like, you know, picture profiles, turn on Vlog, all that kind of stuff, and then I go back to my MASP photo controls as normal and set things there, it remembers the two areas separately, and that's fantastic because it means I don't have to worry about turning Vlog on in movie mode and then going to aperture priority and all my photos are gray and I have to think, oh yeah, I gotta turn my vlog off. That was turned on there. It remembers them separately, and as I click back and forth between them, I've got my video capability and my photos, again, separated very nicely, and that's always been an issue with other cameras. So overall, the FZ2500 is super customizable, very well thought out, and just like the GH4, we appreciated it because it was just so easy and intuitive to use. One of the things we've noticed in the industry that's been very interesting is that the 1-inch sensor, just the overall proliferation of the sensor is crazy huge. I mean, every major manufacturer is using these in their cameras nowadays, and it just works. You're getting a good, small, compact design. You can fit big zooms in front of it or small lenses if you want to have more brighter, compact shooting. Decent low light performance, good 20 megapixel count, somewhat of a soft background. It's become just this catch-all compact sensor, and everybody's using it. And of course, 2500 is no exception. Now, the RX10 Mark III does use their stacked chip versus here the standard chip. We're going to play with that. Overall, what we're finding, the stacked sensor promised faster throughputs and less rolling shutter, but we're finding that on this camera, we're still getting 12 frames per second. It's operating very quickly. It's got a good buffer rate to it. We'll see, though, with the slow-mo, this is limited to 120 frames per second, and the Sony could push up to 240. Now, how much of that is the stacked CMOS and how much is the processing, it's hard to say, but overall, I think this camera's doing a really good job with the chip inside it. I don't know if I'm really proud of this moment, but I did just take a picture of a backlit seagull in the water. So, it's a perfect doctor's office inspirational poster. So Jordan's gonna put some inspirational quote for you guys, and you can appreciate this backlit seagull and then think about how it might change your life for about 3 seconds. Well, we took a tour of the Inglewood Bird Sanctuary again, but pretty slim pickings this morning. Not a lot of birds. You're mostly just going to get puddle shots and detail shots from me on that. But I think we're going to head into the Inglewood area here, grab some lunch, look for some interesting backdrops, and keep shooting this FZ2500. We're in Inglewood now on the streets here, and I know I'm going to probably see something across the street, a grab shot that I'm going to get really quickly. Now, with an SLR or mirrorless camera, this is super easy. You turn the camera on, zoom it right away, and shoot very, very fast. But here, I have to wait for the lens to extend, and then I have to zoom into the range that I want. So we're going to do a little bit of test here and just see what kind of delay we have. I'm basically going to say go, hit the on switch, zoom in, and take a shot, and kind of see what kind of delay we're looking at. So here we go. Go. And zoom, and shoot. I mean, that's not bad, but it's not going to be anywhere close to an SLR mirrorless. There's still a good substantial delay there as I try to get that zoom range where I want it to go. Luckily, the 2500's autofocus is very quick at that point. Another cool, interesting feature, though, just to point out while we got the lens extended here, when I do zoom the lens wide in telephoto, you'll notice that nothing actually changes externally on the camera. And that's really cool. It means that, if you're on a gimbal or something for video work, or you're zooming in and out in an extreme way, you're not going to lose your balance. It's not going to really shift the camera and pull it down. And I really like that feature. Same for stills too, although you probably won't notice the effect as much. And of course, the FZ2500 has touchscreen autofocus. I love it. Again, I can move my finger wherever I want. But even when I bring my eye up to the EVF, I've got full touchscreen autofocus. It works right away. And this EVF has minimal rolling shutter. I love that it extends so far off the body. You bring it up to your eye, your nose is nowhere close to touching the screen. You got plenty of room to move your thumb around in the back behind it to get your focusing point. No lag. I mean, it's a really, really well thought out system, and it makes a camera like this seamless to use when it comes to the Touch AF. All right, so we did a little bit of a test here for continuous autofocus because traditionally Panasonic has been okay, not great. Single point, continuous autofocus the whole way. We got Ron back there playing with the Sony. He just ran straight at camera and we shot off a burst. And what I will say here actually is that the Panasonic did a better job than the Sony. Consistently, the Sony would miss a couple frames, whereas the Panasonic would just hold tight throughout all the shots. As well, we were getting a higher sustained frame rate with the Panasonic during that whole continuous fire burst. So whatever they've done, they've very much improved on the 2500. I would say absolutely usable for nice continuous shooting. I also did a test here with RAW just to see how many shots we get. When you're not autofocusing, you're getting 12 frames per second on the FZ2500, which is respectable. We're getting about 35 to 36 RAW shots in a row, 3 seconds of full sustained fire before the camera has to slow down. So again, I think overall you've got a very usable camera that can handle a lot of throughput. What I really loved about the Sony RX10 Mark II was that it had built-in ND filters, which is such an important and useful thing in a camera that handles a lot of video. What was crazy about the RX10 Mark III was they totally took those away. It makes absolutely no sense. I don't get it. Luckily, the FZ2500, we've got built-in ND filters. They did not make the same mistake. 2, 4, and 6-stop NDs built right into the camera. Fantastic for video work, but keep in mind too, for still photography as well. I often use a 6-stop as my go-to filter if I'm doing any sort of long exposure stuff. Throw a polarizer on there and combine it, you get even more. So a really, really nice feature, very easily implemented here. Beautiful stuff. Now, video capabilities, the FZ2500, actually very respectable. And I know that's what a lot of you guys are looking at when you're looking at this camera. First off, by far, I'm going to say the most important thing is just how easy it is to handle in video. You know, we've talked about nice benefits like having the menu stay separate for video and stills, having the built-in ND filters. I mean, that 6-stop, perfect if you're doing time-lapse for sunrise and sunset, and you don't need to buy an app to do time-lapse because it's built beautifully right into the actual integrated system. Other great things about this camera that we were like, Vlog. Now, of course, we talked about how we got Vlog installed on this camera. If you get it right out of box, you're still gonna have the natural profile and Cine-like D. They're not bad. Vlog really does take it further though. Very flat profile. Push it to the right as usual, but keep in mind, you don't wanna go above the native 400 ISO. One of the big weaknesses on any of these 1-inch cameras is fairly poor low light performance. Another very interesting feature, right out of the HDMI port on this, which is blowing us away, 4K 1080, you're getting 10-bit 422. Now that's a really, really nice color depth. I mean, consider that the FS5 that we're shooting on right now, you have to get the RAW upgrade. It's an $8,000 camera to begin with. Going to an external recorder after all of that, you can get similar kind of color depth. So it's a really nice feature to have on a camera like this. Now to round it out, you're getting decent battery life, mic jack, headphone jack, of course, really, really nice level controls. So overall, they've really made a very decent shooting video camera. It's not all perfect though. I mean, one thing that we did find, 120 frame per second slow-mo, that is the max at 1080. It's not bad, but compared to the Sony, it's a little bit soft, and I think that's where the stacked Sony sensor is doing a better job. The Sony gets brilliantly sharp 120 frame per second high frame rate. It can do 240, which is very respectable, and then you can push it even more ridiculous amounts. This camera, the occasional 120 use, it won't disappoint, but it's not nearly as good as the Sony. All right, now I know that this wrecks the whole continuity of our video, but we want to do our low light ramp up in low light. So check it out here. I mean, as we scale up the ISOs, keep in mind that that is going to be one of the big weaknesses with a 1-inch sensor. 1600 ISO starts to look really noisy for video. I still do think it's usable for stills, but 3200 is going to be your upper limit, and that is pushing it. So keep that in mind. That really is the one deficiency with these smaller sensors. So that brings us to our conclusion, and as usual, I want to talk about, who this camera is for. And I think this is the first time I can say this camera is pretty much for everybody. And what I mean by that is that this is a quintessential jack of all trades. This camera has something for everybody out there. Let me look at it this way. If you want to shoot wildlife, sports, action, you've got things like the big, relatively fast zoom range. You've got great continuous focusing, great buffer rate, fast frame rate, 4K photo modes to capture those moments. I mean, this camera can do it. You get to the video side, and this camera has just, oodles and oodles of customization. You've got great controls, nice manual focus, touch AF, broadcast quality, color depth. I mean, again, all in all, this camera is delivering a fantastic result. I mean, if you wanted to do travel photography or have a B cam or something like that, have something that can even do as a primary sort of walk around camera, this camera can do it with relatively few compromises. Overall, it's one of those cameras you're really pleased with the handling, the controls, the design. It's all well thought out. Everybody seems to like the hood. People throw around the term badass, so I guess that's good as well. The FZ2500, when it came out, we naturally compared it against the Sony RX10 Mark II, Mark III. I mean, these have been fantastic cameras, and so far there hasn't been a lot able to do that. In the FZ1000, it came somewhat close, but it just couldn't push it over the edge. But this camera here now really I would say in a lot of ways, markedly defeats the RX10 series. I mean, yes, there's things like the slow-mo, but overall this camera is doing everything that we've talked about and more for a very, very good design at a very, very good price point. Here in Canada, you're looking at about $1,500 for the FZ2500. Throw on the log profile and you're about $1,630, but that is still substantially less than the $2,000 price point on the RX10 Mark III. And you get ND filters built in, okay? So overall, folks, I think everybody should take a hard look at the FZ2500 because it can really do a lot for you and you're not giving up on anything, really. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Subscribe to us, tweet to us, Instagram us, check out our photos, check out our videos. We do put a lot of these photos up on our Instagram pages because we want you guys to be able to look at these afterwards, so don't forget to check those out. Until next time, we've got some more exciting cameras coming before Christmas. I'll see you then.